Raising a child is a lifetime commitment. Techniques done in the past probably won't be as relevant in today's society. So raising a son prepares him for the role of being a man in a family, which includes being the protector, a leader, a teacher. In studio to discuss the topic, raising a son in the 21st century, is author L. David Harris. We have Damien Williams, an elder at the Ecclesia Bible Fellowship. And via telephone, we have Marcus Blackstock. So we're starting with you, Marcus. Are you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
All right. So the segment is called Raising a Son in the 21st Century. So we are already suggesting that it's a lot different, or it is different today than it was 40 years ago. Do you agree with that?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Because.
But let me ask you a question, though, Marcus.
Yes.
Were you around to raise a son in the 19th century, or the 18th century, or the 20th century?
The 21st century.
All right, take it away. Go ahead.
But I'm saying it is totally different now because these youngsters are a lot more exposed, and therefore there needs to be more fathers around in terms of leading them in the right way and in the right path. And because we are so absent from them, they tend to follow the next big person in front of them who's a male or woman negative. As a result of that, the problem stems in terms of a lot of our boys have become criminals. They have become the fathers very early. So because of that now, our boys have become endangered.
They're becoming endangered?
Yeah, yes, because, the truth is when you look in the classroom, because I've been teaching for over 20 years, right?
Yes.
When you look in the classroom now, there's the absence of males in the classroom who want to further themselves. There's a total absence. You find girls are more now upfront and wanting an education. Boys are totally absent. Why? Because we as fathers are not around.
All right, let me ask you to hold a point there, Marcus, as we bring in L. David. Now, in terms of starting with the last reference, what has been happening in our classrooms over the last 20 years, that's actually an excellent laboratory to measure the transition or the change in the attention, the focus, and the behavior of a lot of our young men.
Well, I'll say that the classrooms that haven't kept up with technology have more difficulty in keeping our children's, our sons' attention.
Yes.
Not because their attention span has necessarily changed, but the difference for me in the 80s and 70s, I had nothing with bright lights on it to capture my attention, with which the teacher needed to contend. And so that's why they have smart classrooms, they have other, technology in the classroom in order to mimic society. So
in the 70s and the 60s, the classroom mimicked society. Let's use Jamaica, for example. In the 60s, we would have had a JBC TV signed on at, what was it, 5 o'clock? 4 o'clock, you heard the anthem, the obligatory cartoon, I think it was Tom and Jerry, and then you would have Ring Ding or Romper Room. So those things were either equally exciting as what was happening in the classroom or equally unexciting, but there were no other things to attract people's attention. But is that, though, Sir Harris, the end-all and the be-all of the transition?
No, that's not the issue. I think now we need to be sort of training our sons to prioritize people over technology. So you don't act like the technology doesn't exist. You don't try to bar them from it. You teach them to maximize it, but you still have to have a people-first mentality.
People-first mentality.
People first.
Where have I heard people-first before? Damien, in terms of what Marcus and Sir Harris have said, where do you fall in terms of your opinion as to the differences in raising men, raising a son in the 21st century as compared with other times?
Okay, so I think apart from technology and times having changed, I think we also have an economic challenge where patriarchy had already determined that men should be providers. And we know that traditional means of education seem not to be as lucrative for men as let's say, trying to boss as an artist or or do some sort of hustling or become a dancer or all of that. So that our education system as it is isn't attractive to the male child.
Is it as necessary? I like the point you mentioned about the bossa tune, and I added the bossa dance. Marcus, presently Johnny Bling, who has been on this program, is posting on Instagram all of these dance moves he's teaching to packed classes in Moscow and other parts of Russia. Now, when you look on the fact that there are alternative means to achieve the ability to provide, to lead, to protect, to raise a family, and to be financially comfortable outside of the traditional means, is that part of the challenge that we have with raising our sons today as opposed to previous years?
All right, I think the whole thing stems from the fact that over the years, our socialization in terms of our boys, it has not evolved. It has not evolved to make the changes necessary for them to really look at life in a different way. We still use the same means of socializing them. And because of that, I think that our methods, our orientation of our boys, the methods are quite weak. Right? I know boys are different, are oriented differently from girls. You know, it takes a strong socialization system to get boys to understand and to follow. Because the truth is, boys have a different mindset from girls, right? But there are ways and means that we can develop. I think there has to be a national policy with regards to how we socialize our children in terms of differently. Because the truth is, you're not going to socialize a boy the same way you socialize a girl. So I think we need to look at how we socialize our boys in the 21st century as against in the 20th century, because things and times have changed, and we have not adapted to those changes. So we expect the same results from children who are exposed differently with the same methods of teaching and orientation and socialization. So you look at those differently.
No, in terms of the conversation so far has been about what's happening in the wider society, what's happening nationally. Let's dial it back to where it all begins, which is in the homes. And the differences today, in truth and in fact, is that there are other skills. Men were supposed to be more burly, more physically dominant, and typified by certain stances on issues and certain jobs. Not so much today. How do we do that transition within the home?
Well, I think even though that may have been okay then, today it may contribute to misogyny, that thought process, that paradigm. It may contribute to the male domination of women. So our mothers, our sisters, our grandmothers are sort of put in the back seat, which is why you have these hashtags like Me Too, because now the society is aware that maybe we haven't been training these young men to be men. Maybe we've trained them with a boy mentality that says, whatever I want at the time I want, and if it happens to cross over what you desire, then so be the case.
You need to reschedule what you desire to match what I have just demanded.
And it also, it adds to the abuse situation.
So Damien, is it so much that the behavior of men has changed over time, or is it that the tolerance for the behavior of men is no longer where or what it was?
I think what is happening now is that the chickens have come home to roost. We are seeing how patriarchy has hurt us
I am happy
more
that
than
you
it
said
has
chicken.
helped us.
I'm happy you said chicken come home to roost rather than which came first, the chicken or the egg. Because I can't solve that one. But continue.
We're seeing how patriarchy has hurt us. And in the 21st century, men are being asked to stand on more than just the male privilege that they've enjoyed for centuries. They're being asked to bring substance. Now, if we had, over the years, taught our men...
Is that true across the board, though? Because we were recently involved in a conversation where it was pointed out that at a particular traditional high school, it was a surname that would give you your grade and not the content on your exam paper. Unless, of course, when you get to CSEC and when you get to the CAPE exams, where all you have is an indistinguishable string of numbers to identify who submitted the content. Then they just marked for content. So the expectation of privilege, the entitlement, and it's not a male-directed phenomenon. There are women who believe in their last name entitlement because dad did this and mom did that, then I too should do it.
Okay, so on the topic of last names, we know that last names come through men anyway.
Yeah.
It's a construct. But systemically, men have enjoyed privilege. When you look at pay scales, men enjoy privilege. And I think now we're being asked to stand on something more. If we had over the years socialize our men around virtues, the psychologists will tell you that a child, a human being, an adult is formed between 0 to 7. The scripture says, train up a child in the way he should grow, when he's old he should not depart from it. There are cultures like the Jewish culture where boys and children are trained so that when they're 13, they're already a man, because who they are, the issue of identity is already inculcated.
Already set.
Set.
Yeah.
You understand? And I think what we've been teaching our men around masculinity is a kind of hardness and crassness, and that being in touch with your gentler self is a kind of effeminization of the men. Yeah? And so we treat everything that is feminine
yet we still say,
as less than.
Yet we
and
still
inferior.
say ladies and gentlemen. So the only time that gentility or that gentleness is required is to assign the fact that there are two genders present in the audience.
And in our very pompous setting, that is a bit of respectability politics that we use about ladies and gentlemen. You understand? But I think.
And in some settings, we've just gone away with that and said mans and mans. Yeah. Well, I'm going to pivot to Marcus and going back to my favorite laboratory, the classroom. And the issues raised just now by Damien and Sir Harris regarding identity, and it is set between 0 and 7 and practiced and perfected by habit and escape. In the adolescent years, what age students do you normally interact with, Marcos?
16 to 17, 18, 19, 20.
I suspected as much. And the issue of not having male presence in classrooms at that age, do you think that that identity crisis is also what is playing out that causes the attention to be spread away from the subjects being taught to include some behavioral matters?
Yes, I do believe, because the truth is, in the classroom, we need more males where boys can identify with these males as role models. Up to Sunday, I had a marathon accounts class, and there's a particular youngster who attended a prominent high school. His mother died, on Sunday was Mother's Day, and I had to go to him and talk to him and let him know that everything will be okay. So at least there's a male voice to reassure him that it's going to be okay. Right? Our boys are not being reassured with a male voice around them. That I'm saying that the women are incompetent or anything, but the truth is, boys tend to listen a lot more to males than they listen to their females, because sometimes they believe that the females are weaker than them, which is wrong. But that's the way they are raised. And outside of that, I think there should be a national policy in terms of how we raise our children, in terms of their gender roles and what to expect and what not to expect. Because if you go to a high school right now and listen to how the boys speak and how the girls speak, there needs to be a national policy in terms of, from the grassroots stage, from the basic school stage, how are we going to orient it, how are we going to socialize our boys and our girls? I think that's where we need to start, make the change.
And a national policy though, Sir Harris?
Yes. As straight as it may sound, we might need it.
All right, let's hear the feedback from Damien and David.
I don't have a problem with national policies just in general, but I think we need to put the onus where it belongs. It belongs in the home. So I'm a father. I need to be responsible in my home.
Yeah.
And if, someone would say, well, maybe that home doesn't have fathers. Well, we still have a village.
Or more than one.
Or more than one.
Because the reality is, in a lot of homes, you have children of the same mother, with different fathers.
Right.
And that also creates conflict within siblings that normally don't exist in other situations.
Right, but that doesn't necessarily get in the way of good training.
Right.
So you may have those conflicts, and many times you do, but if responsible adults realize that you're training children to become adults, then despite all of those anomalies, we still have a focus. And the focus is not allowing society to go extinct or turn to anarchy because we have dropped the ball.
Right.
So national should really start in the home.
In the home.
Okay. Picking up on the point about too many female teachers in the classroom, not enough male. Mr. Harris made a point earlier about teaching the importance of people over technology. And I think when we talk about socialization, what we have to teach our boys is respect for authority. It doesn't matter if the authority is wearing a skirt or a pants. You understand? We have done very well in beating as training. We have not done very well in modeling as training. And so we would say one thing, we would beat for one thing, but in the home, in society, even in the schools, our children aren't seeing examples of what it means to respect authority, what it means to respect another human being, what it means to honor people.
By authority, you're talking Babylon system?
By authority, I mean persons who are given stewardship of leading, of directing.
The reason why I put that in there is because even on Monday in our security alert feature, Sergeant McGibbon from the St. Mary Division, one of the points she raised was that a lot of parents, female parents mostly, will say to a child, Marcus, if you don't behave yourself, I'm going to call the police, make the police lock you up. So if you're saying to a child who is 18 months old, who is probably doing what is normal for a child at 18 months to do, to test the boundaries, I want, and when heard no, to push back against the no. And the response is, well, I'm going to call the police and make the police carry you to jail. Doesn't that instill the fear and the disrespect and concentrate in the minds of children that police equal Babylon equal bad?
Exactly, and we're going back to the point of how we socialize. Keep going back to the point of we have been wrong in the way that we are training our children. We train by modeling. If we say to a child, don't do this, and the child does it, then there are consequences. So we teach consequences, and we follow through.
We teach consequence without deferring the authority into another institution that then causes this resistance, which we are famous for in society.
Exactly.
I think one of the issues that we have is that we use negative as what we think is going to be reinforcement. And so there are far more things that can and should be done. And that we have license to do in society than there are things that we must not and ought not do. Right? And so if we change sort of the focus to the negatives, this is the outcome.
So then perhaps for our final thoughts, Marcus, it's not so much that the boys have changed, the technology of course is more pervasive, but perhaps what needs to happen is that the mentality and the approach to parenting by parents need to change. Yes or no on that, Marcus?
I said yes, but when I speak of the national policy, it includes changing all the way we parent our children. But I'm saying, for one, when a child is rude at a very young age, we say to the child, go pick up the book, as if the book is a punishment. Just like the police, I'm going to call the police, they create that fear factor. So we need to change all of that. So I'm in agreement.
All right. Sorry, we seem to, for that abrupt end, we seem to have lost Marcus. Your final thoughts on whether it is that the society or the boys or the young men have changed, or is it that we need to change the way we parent, our mindset or outlook?
I think we just need to learn how to adapt to the current trends in our parenting, because people are still people. we still have that hierarchy of needs.
I believe so
The
too.
expanded one is 10.
Yeah.
But we all still have those same needs.
Yes.
It's just a matter of now adapting to the current society.
Yes.
Same people, just a different time.
Different times. Damien?
Detail to that, and parenting it doesn't come with a manual. I think perhaps we need to create those kinds of supportive structures.
Does it come with a manual?
It doesn't come with a manual either. So we need to create that community. It still takes a village.
Absolutely.
And we need to create those supportive structures to help parents to be able to do so.
Speaking of the hierarchy of needs, we have a need to hear from Whitney Levy in the morning edition of CVM Live. It's time for the news. Thank you to our panelists. And Marcus, sorry for the abrupt end to that call just now. I won't say who the carriers are. We're on a break.